This is Why Small Business Matters from Northumbria University, supporting small businesses with the Help to Grow management programme.
Welcome to Why Small Business Matters, brought to you by the Help to Grow management team at Northumbria University. I'm Sarah Stevenson, and today I'm joined by Dan Hogan and Aaron Shaw, Directors of Business Tools and Product and Engineering at Starling Bank. We're talking about making tax digital and what SMEs need to do from April 2026. Making Tax Digital is HMRC's new system for reporting income.
Making Tax Digital is really the mandate for kind of two things. It's firstly to keep your records digitally on an approved software, and then secondly to file more regular updates with HMRC, so on a quarterly basis as opposed to the annual basis which businesses do today.
In this episode, we look at how the rules are changing and what you might need to consider after the 6th of April. So welcome along. This is obviously a busy time for businesses and accountants alike, and you have been both of those things. And just rewinding a little bit, you were both founders of the software business Ember. Can we talk a little bit about that?
We originally sort of started the business back in 2019. So we're trading under the name Ember. And we kind of set out to help small businesses solve this accounting and tax problem and help them through manage all of these here obligations that come and they need to deal with. We've been kind of working on our business ever since. From the start, it was sort of myself and Dan looking at this here and trying to build out this here product. But over the years, we've helped sort of hundreds and more recently thousands of businesses navigate those obligations. And last year, we were thinking about how we might go on to maximize that impact with the Making Tax Digital legislation coming up. And we got talking with Starling and decided to join forces from there. So that was a little bit of kind of our journey to where we are today.
Dan, you moved from Australia to the UK, I believe. And what was the startup scene like for you and starting that journey with Ember?
I did, yeah. So I think that was 10 years ago now, which is crazy to think. But I've still obviously got the Australian accent, and was fortuitous enough to meet Aaron at a WeWork. That was actually where we first met. So we are one of those WeWork success stories that they purport to have actually happened. And I moved to the UK because I knew that it was going to be it has the platform for access to a much bigger market. I think Australia is an amazing place, but the UK is, and was at that time, the heart of fintech and a really exciting place to be. Has continued to be. However, obviously, over the last few years and since Brexit, things are kind of shifting a little bit. But I'm still excited to obviously be in London. And the opportunity that we had 7 years ago when we did start the business was actually built on the foundations of Making Tax Digital. And it's funny to think that was 7 years ago now. And we were having that conversation, I remember, around Christmas back in 2018. And we are here today on the precipice of it actually launching. So coming into force in April of this year. So we had a number of years where it was pushed back, but we're now at the point where we're really excited to help these business owners through. And the main impetus, I think, from HMRC side is that there's a huge tax gap that exists within the UK. It's around £40 billion a year, which is pretty crazy to think. That is a very large number. A lot of that is through misfilings or mistaken filings or translation errors from your digital records into the online submission processes. So we're really looking to try and see if we can reduce that tax gap that exists and help HMRC both collect digitally and be able to help these business owners understand how much tax they owe in real time.
And Aaron, you're a software engineer, aren't you? So what was the actual problem you were trying to solve when Ember started out?
I'm a software engineer by trade. I've worked for sort of various different sort of startups, big tech companies, agencies. But it was when I first moved to London about a year prior to Ember, where I wanted to kind of, what I really wanted to do was help more businesses build great products. So I started my own consultancy, which kind of meant going through the process of setting up a business. And it was kind of in setting up that their business where I sort of first stumbled across this accounting and tax problem that we're now trying to solve. So really the crux of it was I started this to help companies build great products. I have to deal with all of this here stuff above and beyond what it is that I actually started the business to do. And it was pretty complex. There's quite a lot of things that you need to deal with, from invoicing, paying yourself, managing taxes, accounting, all of this here stuff. And it was pretty intimidating at the start. But after about a year or so of really kind of going through that process and going through the pain, as you started to see the patterns emerge. And like as Dan was saying, it was on the horizon was this making tax digital legislation, which enabled the end submission. Open banking was a thing that was happening at the time. And obviously machine learning, and now more recently sort of with the introduction of AI and the increasingly sort of and the increasing power that has, it was really, really obvious to myself like how this could be made so much easier for people like myself. So really that was kind of the a little bit of kind of the origin behind it and the pain point that I felt. I really wanted to help people like myself like deal with this here problem and make this here a lot more straightforward.
And Dan, was there anything that didn't work early on? I mean, was it a fairly straightforward startup journey?
Absolutely not, Sarah. I don't think any startup journey is straightforward. It's been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life, probably the most rewarding experience of my adult life. I'm sure Aaron will probably agree with that. But there were many ups and downs, and so throughout that entire period, we essentially set out to shake up the market within accounting and tax, and we originally actually looked at providing banking services, which is interesting. This is well back in the day. We wanted to try and, I guess, complete the loop from bank transaction all the way through to tax submission without ever having to leave the one platform. And part of that was actually looking to offer banking services, but it was going to be too much overhead. We looked at the banking as a service rails, and we thought, actually, let's just focus on what the core proposition is, and that's solving the tax problem for small business owners, because the likes of Xero, QuickBooks, Sage, all of the bigger accounting players are much more focused on bigger businesses, and what we wanted to do was actually solve it for the much smaller business. Sometimes it's a bit of a sledgehammer to crack a nut when you think about a Xero for a much smaller business, and we really wanted to try and solve that problem for them. So then we really focused in on what those problem statements were for that much smaller business, and built the complete end-to-end product suite for them. So looking at payroll, things like invoicing, both supplier and client invoicing, pulling their transactions from open banking. So open banking was what sat at the core of our product, and that was a really big piece of legislation shift that allowed us to actually provide that end-to-end service as well. All within both a mobile app and an online web interface. But one of the biggest challenges I think we faced throughout that time was actually distribution. And I would say to a lot of business owners out there, I think the distribution problem is one of the biggest challenges to solve. And so whilst we had a really great product and we had a very good sort of early product market fit, taking it to that next stage of actually hyper scaling and getting it into the hands of a lot more businesses was a bit of a battle, because you are going up against the likes of Xero, QuickBooks on advertising spend, and you kind of need a different route or wedge into that market. And so what we found after growing sustainably to start with, we then did another funding round, and off the back of that funding round, we actually shifted our go-to-market strategy and we started building an embedded product. And that embedded product actually then went into the banking ecosystem. So we actually were able to sell into quite a few years ago now, HSBC, and we had an embedded partnership with HSBC where they were actually servicing their customers on Ember, but within the actual bank. And that allowed us to then sort of scale to a lot more businesses for a much lower customer acquisition cost, because we didn't obviously have to spend any money on acquiring those customers, and we were able to actually have a lot more product-led growth, which is where then we entered that banking market to be able to see if we could do partnerships with them. And then that took us up to the start of last year when we sat down and we thought, actually, this could be a good point in time to look at selling the business, and have very fortuitously found ourselves in Starling's hands. And it's been an amazing process from here, actually integrating Ember into what is now known as Starling Accounting. And we're really, really excited to help those customers now through that journey, or the next phase of our journey as well.
Aaron, what do you think Starling saw in you as a startup to integrate you into the bank?
I think what we've always been really, really good at is building great products and great like offering for customers. So it's like, but throughout the years, we've had so much customer love, and it's been a real joy to be able to help these thousands of business owners like solve these really complex problems. And we've been really, really good at that. And I think Starling have seen that. I think where, like as Dan mentioned, we've been less good at over the years was getting that amazing product into the hands of the business owners that really need it. Obviously, we've done this to thousands of business owners, but we're very conscious that really there are millions of business owners that are suffering through these sort of same problems where we can help impact. So Starling obviously having the sort of the distribution and the scale, and I've done that there very successfully over the last few years, and us having this kind of incredible accounting product for businesses, it was really kind of like a bit of an obvious match, particularly with the Making Tax Digital legislation kind of coming up in the horizon. And yes, banks really wanted to take advantage of that, their opportunity as well.
And so currently, is this only available to Starling customers?
Correct, yes, will be available to Starling customers.
So I want to talk a little bit about what's been described as the biggest tax shake-up in 30 years. Let's talk a bit about why businesses are nervous about this and still anxious about this. You made this part of Ember's direction of travel right from the very beginning. So really, I just want to think about how this is going to help sole traders, landlords who have income over 50,000, I believe, at the moment. Talk me through the process. If they come to Starling Bank, how will this help them?
Making Tax Digital is really the mandate for kind of two things. It's firstly to keep your records digitally on an approved software, and then secondly to file more regular updates with HMRC, so on a quarterly basis as opposed to the annual basis which businesses do today. So the product that we're launching and what we're bringing into sort of Starling is really designed to help sort of ease their transition for business owners. Firstly, for those who don't have digital tools today and will need to start keeping their records digitally, there's a lot of anxiety around from business owners that we've sort of spoken to around, I'm going to need to adopt this new tool. I'm going to need to find this new thing, this new way of doing things. And by bringing this here sort of functionality in and allowing you to comply within your bank, we're really saying it's actually you don't need to adopt a new tool. You can use what you already have to comply and be fully compliant with this here legislation. And that there sort of leads on to the sort of the second point. There's a lot of sort of anxiety and fear around, is this going to be more work for me? Is this going to cost me more for my accountant? Is there going to be more of a burden, more things for me to keep on top of? Which is understandable, obviously, considering HMRC are introducing this sort of quarterly obligation. But what we're really trying to do with the product is make that as easy as possible and as automated as possible for business owners. Sort of by bringing in the technology again into the bank, leveraging the data picture that the bank have, we're really wanting to be categorizing those transactions and kind of filing those obligations really as easy as kind of coming in and doing a quick sort of review and submitting. So yeah, that there again, bringing it into the bank is what we see as the ultimate solution for business owners. It's the one place to manage your finances end to end. It's something we're sort of super excited about. I think the anxiety is sort of surrounding Making Tax Digital at the minute totally understandable, and I think it will be a little bit of a transition for business owners, particularly at the start, as you sort of shift from doing it one way to doing it another way. But long term, I think as you're kind of moving to this more real time system of submitting your information, it'll be net beneficial for a lot of these guys.
Yeah, I think just to add to that as well, talking to that sort of net beneficial part, what we believe and what we see actually with a lot of business owners and what we've had experience with is it's really hard to understand how much tax you owe at the end of the day. And when you get to that point in which you have to actually pay your tax, you can find yourself out of pocket. And that's one of the key that's one of the key leading reasons businesses actually shut down is because they can't pay their taxes. And so what we want to try and do is obviously bring that forward so they can understand on a quarterly basis what their estimated tax liability will be at the end of the year, so that they can actually start saving for that. And again, talking to that synergy between the bank and the product, what we can then do is put that money off into a space and it can kind of come out of your balance. So it's in this dedicated pot that means that at the end of the year, you can actually then pay that tax back. And that's another sort of benefit that we see of keeping on top of this and not getting to the end of the year and then having to chase around all your invoices, having to chase around all your receipts, sending that off to the accountant, going back and forth with the accountant. So we really hope, although it might be more work on a more regular basis, at the end of the year, you'll be in a really nice position where you've got everything in one space and you can actually just do that end of year filing. And you've already saved for what that end of year tax bill looks like as well.
Does that remove the need for an accountant?
Oh, I'd say not. Speaking as an accountant myself. So it's a really interesting question, Sarah, and I think one that we have thought a lot about, because what we want to try and do is actually facilitate the accountant's workflow at the end of the year to help these customers. So we've done a lot of thinking on this, and we believe what makes kind of a good accountant versus a great accountant is the ability not just to help their customers comply with regulation, but actually where they can help them either optimize their tax at the end of the day and give them that complete peace of mind that they're actually filing correctly. What I would say is that making tax digital will help the business owner, and our product will help the business owner with the more regular filings to potentially do by themselves, because they are not necessarily what HMRC takes as gospel or the final sort of tax submission, because the final tax submission happens at the end of the year. The business owners can potentially do this by themselves, and that will alleviate some of the burden on the accountants, so that when actually it gets to the end of the year, they can come in and help their customers through the end of year filings, because that's the point in which you pull in all your different ancillary sources of income from capital gains, or if you've sold a house or anything like that, that's when, or dividends and all that income comes in then at that point.
If I'm a sole trader and I have an income of 60,000, so I'm over that threshold currently as it stands, what do I need to do differently?
So yeah, firstly, you'll need to sign up with HMRC and register yourself for Making Tax Digital. You should have received communications from HMRC that you do fall under and you are mandated within this here first bucket, but you will still need to go to HMRC's website and actually sort of say opt in. Once you're opted in, you will then need to use an approved digital tool in order to keep your records digitally. So from the 6th of April onwards, you'll need to have basically a digital trace of your sort of financial picture and kind of going forward. And then 3 months in is sort of when the first quarterly submission will become due. And that there is effectively for your sole trade or landlord portion of your income. You will need to submit a summary of your income and expenses for that there quarter. You'll need to do that there for each sort of subsequent quarter up until the end of the year, which kind of completes your full picture. And then at the end of the year, you'll still need to do that final self-assessment that business owners are used to doing to add in all of the additional income that might go above and beyond your sort of sole trader or landlord specific income.
And is this editable? I mean, if you've made a mistake and you only notice that by the second quarter, can you go back in and amend the records?
So you can submit as many times as you want. You're required to submit at least once a quarter. But for example, in month 2, let's say you've made an error that you discover in month 4, you can then just submit again. You can basically resubmit and correct that there mistake kind of going forward. Probably important to note that it doesn't actually have any tax implication for you until that final self-assessment at the end of the year. It's more just providing a summary to HMRC, so that they can provide you, again, with a better estimate going forward throughout the year.
Now, we talk, Dan, a lot about automation and AI saving time for small businesses, but it sounds to me as though we're expecting a bit more, or HMRC are expecting a bit more of business owners every quarter to actually input this information. Are we adding to their workload?
There may be a little bit more work they have to do on a quarterly basis. Yeah, that's correct. But as I was sort of saying before, hopefully that is then a time saving at year end. So they've obviously got all of their books and everything in place that at the year end, they don't then have to spend all that time running around trying to find their receipts and everything.
So as entrepreneurs yourselves, having set up Ember, how did you manage your business finances before? I'm just intrigued. You've set this tool up for other business owners, and I want to know how you yourselves manage this.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be a company that uses your own product. So we used to use Ember to actually look after our own finances back in the day. I myself am a chartered accountant, so I come from that world, and was able to set up and manage all of our back-end processes and systems via Ember, which is, I think, a really good way for a small business owner to test their product and make sure everything is working properly. We ran our whole payroll through Ember, and we used to do all of our transaction categorization, reporting. So a really good way to, one, test the product and all the new features, and two, make sure that it's all good.
And have you done much testing with businesses before this tool has gone live with Starling?
Yeah, definitely. So I think having run Ember and the product from end to end, we've had sort of thousands of customers who have used the product. So I think that's been a very good proving and testing ground for us over the years. And we actually just launched as of last Monday. So we now have customers coming through, and it's been a really nice shift from being in build mode to now launch mode, and getting all that initial customer feedback as well, which is brilliant.
I want to talk a little bit about some research that's come out recently from Starling Bank that suggests that SMEs think digital tools cost 15 times more than they actually do, and why there's such a disconnect between reality and what people perceive. So I just wondered whether that was something that was relevant to you developing this product, that people out there think, oh, well, Xero's so expensive, and Sage and all these other products that may or may not link in with my bank. Why is that relevant to what you've developed?
Yeah, absolutely. It's fed directly into the pricing for our product, which is free. So, it was an amazing piece of research, actually, that really was quite striking in that these small business owners, there's just such a huge perception gap between how much these tools cost to both run but also implement. So I think this is both a time cost, not necessarily just the direct cost of the software that goes into actually implementing and then having to run on a regular basis. And obviously the SME landscape is made up of 99% SMEs, so they are the vast majority of the market. And what we found during the research was that the perception was that it cost them on average around £63,000 a year to manage their finances. So that's obviously in time and software, which kind of blew our minds. It was a really huge number. So if we can actually bring down that cost and the perception of how much it actually costs to run these tools, because what we want it to do is actually improve their productivity rather than reduce it. So they don't have to spend as much time, and introducing that automation into things like setting up auto categorization. So we have a feature that actually allows customers to set up transaction rules, whereby if that transaction comes in again, it gets automatically categorized, so they're not having to come in and manually do that. So it's informed both the design and the build of the product, as well as us essentially offering this for free. So we're trying to really help business owners not have to increase the cost or their cost base. And that's, I think, something that we've been really leading in, and you've kind of seen the market now follow, which is interesting. And something that we're really proud of, because I think historically Starling has been very good at offering free banking services. That is a really good core proposition of ours, and something that we're staying true to, with helping businesses not just with their core banking, but beyond.
Do you think, I mean, there obviously are still businesses that are spreadsheet based. And I wondered whether you think it's a mindset issue that, yes, they think there is a cost to implementing these tools, but it's also change. And how do we get those small businesses to embrace the change with something like this?
Yeah, it's both that, and so it's both a resistance to change, I think, as well as a control thing. I think business owners have set up their spreadsheets and their systems and processes in a certain way, and it's taken them a lot of time to get there for that. And now they're having to kind of digitize that or bring that into a digital tool. So they've seen that there's a lot of kind of sunk cost into this, and now they're going to have to learn a new tool to be able to file, which is why we're not necessarily saying you have to ditch the spreadsheet. I think spreadsheets are definitely useful for business owners to be able to run analysis on top of, and have a more flexible / controlled environment in which they can do things like pricing and getting an understanding of what their gross margins are. But the filing at the end of the day does have to go through an approved software. And to Aaron's point before, that's why we're trying to make it as seamless as possible for them, and trying to automate as much as possible. I think what we have been really good at historically is building UX first software. So all of our product is laced with educational tips. So we have little tool tips all throughout that says what this category is made up of, and whether there are any things that you should be keeping in mind when it comes to, say, using the category itself. And then displaying things like what a profit and loss is, what a balance sheet is. We actually really talk to the business owner in their own language. So we don't use any of that confusing accounting jargon which exists in a lot of other products. So we don't use debits or credits or accounts payable or accounts receivable. And we try and just talk to them how they would actually understand. So we use things like money owed or money owed to the business to really try and make it as seamless as possible.
Going back to Starling Bank research recently, I think the statistic was digital tools could add 25 billion to the economy. And I just wondered how that translates, how better bookkeeping can actually translate into national productivity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like, given that the perception, or like what business owners were telling us, was that it cost them £63,000 per year on managing their finances, we can really reduce that. So I think we can reduce that through that automation that I was talking about before, through essentially giving these tools away for free as well. So bringing that actual sort of marginal cost down. If you look at the market, obviously all of the other accounting software that exists is paid for. And we're really just trying to lower the barrier to entry for these businesses. So I think the actual software cost itself, combined with the time saved that these business owners can actually leverage. And also, I think we've obviously spoken about AI, and it wouldn't be a podcast unless we actually talked about it. But the accounting space is exactly where we believe this application of AI is really going to help business owners from a productivity perspective. I think it's a really interesting conversation to have around the business owner now becoming better versed in accounting and tax, and they can actually lean on ChatGPT and these things to actually get them to a point where they are challenging their accountant almost sometimes on what is or what isn't allowable from a deductible perspective. And it's a really great way for them to obviously then reduce that cost even further by leveraging these tools and by leveraging AI to help them improve efficiencies across the business.
And if someone is saving that time and becoming more productive because of this, where do you see innovation coming from? What are these small businesses going to do with their time to innovate and grow?
Yeah, I think spending it on spending it on what they actually started the business to do in the first place. That was one of the core missions of Ember, was actually free up your time so you can do what you do best. And essentially that is running your business. So whether that's focusing on a sales pipeline, or focusing on marketing, or being able to do those founder-led sales, or just spending more time improving the operations of the business, and all of this, I think, is just going to lead to much better outcomes for these small business owners in time.
Yeah, but I was just going to say, to add to that as well, it's for those who may not be as sort of laser focused on sort of growth and scaling the business. It could just be having more time to spend with your family and friends, right? It's like a lot of business owners are super, super busy, work super long hours. And this here sort of mandated thing that you have to do at the end of the day is, yeah, it can be quite exhausting for a lot of people. So being able to alleviate that burden from people to, focus on what it is that you love, be that growing and scaling your business or anything else, I think giving that their time back for the number of people who suffer through that, hugely, hugely impactful.
Yeah, I definitely was looking at that from the founder lens. You're dead right, Aaron. That is an amazing thought.
So I'd like to talk about the future and a little bit more about automation, because we often hear people saying, well, if I'm going to do this, I won't need to use my financial controller anymore. Maybe I can upskill them to do something else. I just wonder how you see businesses changing because of this.
Yeah, I think like as I mentioned before, what we see the biggest sort of pain points that a business owner would say go to an accountant to help themselves or go to an advisor to help themselves is twofold. So one, it's paying for that peace of mind. So I think peace of mind is exactly what a business owner needs, and sometimes you don't necessarily get that fully from AI or from a platform that isn't necessarily regulated. And I think business owners can still really rely on those advisors to give them that information. So paying for peace of mind is really important, and I think is going to continue to be important because sometimes you can get misinformation or sometimes these things can hallucinate. And then the second thing is being able to I guess look at those kind of tax optimizations, and I think that's where you're going to go to kind of get that solid advice as to how you can actually say structure your tax in a way that will help you to save money on tax and to help you pour that money back into the business. So I think those are the two key things that I think business owners will continue to rely on external advice for, and we're not necessarily at the point where we can fully rely or fully trust the likes of AI just yet.
And Aaron, from a technical perspective, how is financial management going to change, do you think, in the future? Have you got any prediction about what tech is going to be available for sole traders and SMEs?
Certainly, a lot of things will be more automatable. I think it's like I think there's two aspects to it. First is that a lot of things will become more automatable and a lot more sort of self-serve, so that you can categorize your transactions kind of correctly, get the right invoices and do the right sort of matching and take care of that administration, that sort of day-to-day administration. I think there's a lot of scope to alleviate the burden there. And then the second bit, which I think Dan sort of talked about a little bit earlier on, is I think it's going to greatly help with understanding and demystifying some of this here stuff on a more real-time basis. So instead of having to wait for your accountant to come back to you on a question, maybe on an email thread or something like that, you can just ask, like, what does this mean? What are the tax implications of this here? And start to build a little bit of that understanding yourself, so that you might be able to go and challenge your accountant on, are these the right sort of like tax implications? Could I not be doing it this here way? I think it will empower like a lot more business owners to have that there understanding, where currently they maybe don't, and it's hard to accumulate that understanding. So I think the automation is obviously one aspect of it. The understanding, I think, is probably less talked about, but arguably more powerful.
And will there be a product where it's customizable for your business? So with AI and with machine learning, will that tool then be able to understand who I am as a business and what I need from it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have we have quite a lot of this in place today for our customers, and we have found this here really, really useful for Ember customers historically. So, for example, whenever you first come into Ember, we'll predict your the categories for your transactions based off of the kind of the global data set and how businesses as a whole have categorized their transactions. But as you start to say, actually, for me, this transaction at Tesco's means this, we'll start to learn from that over time, and over time that there becomes more and more automated. I think with AI, there's a lot more that we can do there, and a lot more sort of personalization that we can add in. And I think that there's definitely direction of travel, because we've sort of firsthand seen the power of personalization and making this really feel like it's your platform.
And I'd like to know, you're both, obviously you founded this business. What's happening with you from an entrepreneurial perspective? Are you thinking about the future? Are you looking at developing new tools, or is this something, any irons in the fire that you can tell us about?
So we're with Starling for the next few years. That's the party line. But yeah, I think always thinking about these things, and I know Aaron's been vibe coding a fair bit, which is interesting. I think that's a whole new world. But yeah, I think for now we're really focused on getting the product into customers' hands, and it's a really exciting opportunity, obviously, because Starling has hundreds of thousands of businesses that we can solve this problem for, and we probably felt as though we hadn't fully achieved our mission, and I think that was also part of the reason that we joined Starling, was that they have a very similar mission to ours, and what we really want to do is help solve that burden of administration problem for these small businesses, and it aligns really well with helping them also be good with their money, and we can continue to solve Ember's mission in hand with Starling. And it's been a really great experience, I think, both from a company culture perspective, because they have aligned really well, and I think that's been working amazingly. I think a lot of businesses, when they actually sell, have quite a high turnover of employees, and it's amazing to see that actually we've lost one person throughout this entire thing, and that was just because they wanted to go and work at another startup. So everyone has continued on, and it's been a really great integration story, I think, and one that we're really excited to continue over the next few years. Beyond that, who knows?
And based on your experience, I wondered if you had any advice out there for startups who are looking to develop and perhaps align with larger businesses?
I think from my side, one of the biggest learnings throughout this entire journey has been that distribution is so important. So when you're thinking about building a product, you can't just build a product and hope that people will come. Build it and they will come mentality kind of leads you into a path where I think you build it and no one will come. And so thinking about distribution almost before you've built the product is a really good way to then understand how you can actually get that into customers' hands. You obviously have to be solving a problem of some sort, and that has to be true throughout the entire journey of the product lifecycle. But I think distribution is a really important one, and also choosing a domain that you are really well versed in. I think with the advent of AI, there's going to be a lot of businesses spun up just for solving potentially not true problems, or solving things just as a bit of a side quest. So I think having that domain knowledge in what it is that you're trying to solve for is really important. Sorry, Az, do you want to add something there?
Yeah. Like I would probably just say it's like, I don't probably expect to have all of the answers up front. I think it's like there's a lot of sort of the journey is not linear. It's a lot of sort of twists and turns, and yeah, I think it's you have to some extent just embrace that, enjoy it. It has to be a problem that you're sort of passionate enough to sort of stick through those sort of twists and turns. But yeah, I think go for it.
Well, thank you. It's been an absolute delight to talk to you today. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Cheers.
So thank you once again to Dan and Aaron from Starling Bank. And to people listening today, this isn't about more admin. It's about spreading it across the year, removing that panic of January, and finally giving your business the financial clarity it deserves. Thanks for listening. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, why not explore previous conversations of why small business matters, brought to you by the Help to Grow management team at Northumbria University.